What is going on today, Ashes family? So, the other day on stream, we decided to rank all of the Artisan Master skills or professions by their economic impact, how their ability to make you money throughout the long term thinking of the game. Originally, when we did this chat, I didn't have the images correct for all the tier lists. They are fixed now. I'm kind of hiding it behind my head here right now, but you guys will see it at the end of this video, the updated version of it. But I also wanted to include some of the discussion around what we had and why we put things where they are. Obviously, there's a lot of up to speculation. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet about the master class and how the different professions are exactly going to work and intertwine with each other. So this list is very likely to change, but again, this isn't a ranking on what is going to be best, what is going to be the most fun, what is going to be the most unique or whatever. This is about what has the ability to make you gold over the long haul of the game. So without further ado, you guys, let's get into that discussion. Also, just a quick reminder, you guys, if you haven't signed up for your Ashes of Creation account yet, I have a referral link that you can use down below to sign up for your account for absolutely no charge. And if you do so before September 10th, you will get this statue in game that you can place within your house, in your freehold, as a decoration to commemorate the struggles that we are going through as a humanity right now. This is very, very early theory crafting, right? But alchemy and cooking are probably going to be like two of the best long-term sustaining ones. Granted, cooking especially, and why I was considering ranking it A tier, would probably have a lower profit margin, except for maybe some super rare stuff. Alchemy, you could argue similarly, but the reason I rank cooking a little bit lower in terms of profitability is because you can often get a lot of cooking materials and goods just from hunting monsters, just from questing, just from adventuring, doing dungeons, raiding, whatever it might be. But cooking is always in demand. People always want cooking. People always want cooked goods. Whenever you're going into any type of content, you want to have the extra advantages that you can. So cooking is always going to be in demand. You know, things like siege weapon building, shipbuilding, they're going to be a lot more specific. Carpentry, they're going to be a lot more specific on the market that's going to want them. And there will come a time where if the majority of the people, active people on the server, have acquired most of the stuff that they want, granted this is a very, very long look down the roof into the future, but they're not going to need there won't be as much demand for those professions anymore. Also, if they're not doing repairs on stuff, such as where armor smithing and weaponsmithing will really shine in the long term, because repairing gear in this game will require materials and will require an appropriate level artisan to do so. What we need to do is make sure we have a firm understanding of what the crafting system entails as a whole, okay? And we have already talked about gathering and processing a fair bit. We can kind of do a refresher on these. And from there, we're going to look at our individual crafting professions. For things like blacksmithing and scribe, we can do our best as together to kind of figure out what these professions might be and assign them a position on the scale, and then we can kind of rate things. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of variables. There's only so much we can do for theory crafting this. There's going to be a lot of variables at play here that we cannot quantify, but we can put a reasonable expectation behind just the use and what it's going to provide to the economy. Saturation of any given type of profession is really outside of anybody's scope, and it'll just, if it happens, it'll just be a thing for whatever professions, because that's really what it's all about. It's about how much money will you be able to make in the long term mastering these professions. My understanding is, as of right now, You can master gathering, you can master into processing, or you can master into one of these. I have heard that at some point you could master all of crafting. I have heard that they revised that and went down to you could master an undetermined amount of these, like 2 or 3 of them. And once you learn, go into mastery on those, that's it. There's no going back. There's no changing it. So we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see on a lot of that, what it's going to look like. But for now, we're going to work with the information we have. And just having an understanding of how MMOs kind of play out will be utilized here as well. There's going to be an enchanting system in the game as well, where you will be able to craft or enchant an item up to like plus 15 or whatever it might be to give it boosted stats or more power, higher durability, whatever it might be. That is something I do want to explore as well. It is mentioned on this crafting page, so we'll go into that. Realistically, because everybody's going to be able to do cooking to a certain level, but only people that master into it are going to be able to do it at a high level. So that high level food is probably going to be reserved for more high level content. For just going out and doing basic stuff in the world, you're probably just going to use basic food. There's going to be a lot of small nuances that honestly we won't know until we are a little bit deeper into the game. This is early speculation. But if I had to say right now, just due to its long term, carpentry is, I don't know that I would say it's a C. All I know is it's definitely not going to be on par with some of these. Let's look at cooking. I'm already pretty confident. It can make bacon. Okay, obviously this is the best profession in the game right here. We already know that cooking, similar to alchemy, is going to provide consumables, right? That easily. I already put cooking in S tier. It's already there, even though we hadn't gone over cooking yet. We already knew this. Reason being, same with alchemy, it provides a consumable item that gives the user a buff, that gives the user an advantage that they would otherwise not have in combat, or possibly even in other crafting, or in finding quests or quest items. Who knows what types of buffs we might get between cooking bonuses and alchemy bonuses. But because these items are going to provide the player with buffs and they are consumable, they're like basically a one-time use. There might be some exceptions to the one-time use policy, but we'll see. And they are temporary buffs. This puts a really, really high demand on them. While the profit margin per item might be much smaller than with other professions, they will be turning so much inventory that they will always be in demand. And that also means that the supply chain feeding them will be in high demand. If the lower level food gives you a decent buff, but the high level food gives you a little bit better, you're only going to use that high level food in the most high level of content. For anything and everything else, you're going to use the cheap stuff that's easy to come by that gives you almost as good of a buff. I can see cooking not being quite as on high demand as everything else. You could make the same argument for alchemy, but that is a very, very good point on cooking's overall viability. And as the game goes on into the later game, when this list is really going to be a thing, then yeah, I can see cooking kind of coming down a bit. The thing is, alchemy typically provides a more specified buff to a certain type of abilities, certain classes or archetypes, or it simply just replenishes health pool, replenishes resource, which, you know, as an instant use on demand is extremely important. All right, moving on from cooking, we got Jewelcrafting. Basically, there's going to be 5 jewelry slots versus 2 weapon and a range slot, which in theory means that jewelry or a jewel crafter will be filling more slots per character than a weaponsmith would be, but not as much as an armorsmith. The question will really become two questions. What do gemstones play as a role in the game, and how does a jewel crafter use them in their craft? And what is durability like on jewelry? Because similar to the issue with carpentry, if it's a one-time thing, if you craft an item and that's it, you don't do anything more beyond making items, there's no replayability to that. Once you've hit a certain point of saturation in the market or on the server for players having their jewelry slots filled, what do? What is your purpose? If there's no jewels to put into sockets, jewel crafting is going to be a very small niche profession. If jewelry has a durability loss and can be destroyed or needs to be repaired to maintain its contribution on your character, that gives some necessity in the long term to a jewel crafter. What really needs to be a thing is gemstones, and gemstones need to be destroyed when they're removed from a piece of gear, so that it creates a constant need for the generation or finding of gemstones, which often comes with mining. If cut jewels are needed for socketing or as ingredients in, say, enchantments, then jewel craft will be super important. If it's only for the jewelry slots, it will be important, but not necessarily top tier. I 100% agree. Yeah, here's jewel craft. I'm going to put jewel crafting on A tier for now. Once we find out a bit more about what this profession does, we might move it beyond that. It'll definitely be important to fill those jewelry slots. And being that there's 5 jewelry slots per character and thousands of characters on a server at any given time, I think it's going to be quite a while before that's something that really goes away. We'll put carpentry under B tier for now. There's a lot that it just remains to be seen. You could very much make an argument that I'm way premature on doing something like this, but this is just to get people thinking and talking, right? And it will create questions for people to ask, hopefully to the dev team, so that we can get more information on it, so that they can get thinking about, oh yeah, actually, we don't really have a long-term end game for this profession. We need to add an element for that. That might be a thing. Like let's say for carpentry, when your node gets sieged and destroyed, or your freehold, your house gets destroyed, you know, yeah, you get your blueprint, you get all your goods, all your furnishings and all that, and they get sent to you so that you can go and basically buy your new freehold, buy your new house, and everything's going to be back the way you had it, la-di-da. What if you required a carpenter of a certain, whatever your highest level furnishing was, you needed a carpenter of that level or higher in order to reconstruct everything in your house, and they got a fee for that. Scribes. Okay, so I am actually not super familiar on the scribe profession. Scribes can create scrolls or books, but for what purpose? They want to be able to collect information about the events of the world as they see it from their point of view. For instance, nodes leveling up. They want to be able to take that information down and be the one to distribute it. That sounds pretty neat. They're the lore. They are the historians of the world. The history of each server will be tracked and visible to players. We're going to keep track of the history of the world so that we can tell people the story up to the current day. A player who's brand new, who's come in at the 6-month mark, can take a look at each server, what each server has done, how each server has tackled the storyline, and they can decide for themselves what community they want to join, what version of the world they want to take part in. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a really, really neat, like, role-playing type thing. But in terms of an artisan profession, at the village stage, the scientific node's unique building is the library. Players can use the library to access information, including but not limited to the following: history of narrative events when they occurred, locations, and last known quantity of gatherable resources. That could be valuable information depending what's going on. Location and inhabitants of new dungeons or points of interest that have spawned. Runic power stones for armor. Okay, here we go. We'll click on this in a second here, but this is what might make it a viable thing here. I feel like it's a very niche profession that can be worked around. But common armor and weapon recipes, level 25 and under. This is a moot point. This adds 0 to long-term profitability. And I mean, if this is the case, right? Like if providing enhancements to your gear is the primary function of the scribe in terms of economic contribution, I think it's actually pretty good. Of course, there's always the variable that we're not able to consider, and really Intrepid won't even be able to manage or consider, and that is how many people choose to do what professions. Is there going to be a mass saturation of one type and with almost nobody doing another thing, you know? That will remain to be seen. Gear enhancements, power stones. This is the scribe power stones. Can be applied to add elemental or energy types of damage. So that could be really advantageous and niche to the content that you're working on, right? If you're in the Arctic and you're going up against a bunch of water and ice, or against a bunch of ice type enemies, you might want to enhance your gear with fire elemental damage. You know, if you're out in the ocean and you're doing a battle against a giant kraken, you might want to have like thunder or lightning type damage. And if it's something that you either has a time limit to it, so it's good for an hour, or it's active until your item is destroyed, or you override it with something else, or just disable it. In any case, that provides an economy, a constant use, therefore supply need, a demand for power stones of various elements. Here's a big thing that I am theory crafting on, you know. But if you're based at a node, if you're based on that high mountain node that's full of ice and everything, you're not going to be able to craft fire power stones there. You're going to have those materials shipped from somewhere like a volcano type area to you, or you'll have to go there and craft the item there and then transport it back, all via the caravan system. Making those stones that you make in the desert extremely valuable to the people in the snow biome, and something that I think a scribe could really take advantage of with that. But the runic power stones, I think, actually does give the scribe some viability. Depending on how powerful the advantage from those runic power stones can be, gonna give you enough of an advantage, this could potentially go into S tier. Potentially, I think. But for now, as a moneymaker, I'm gonna leave it in A tier. Last two, we already did weaponsmithing. We kind of lumped that into an S tier because it'll be a big need. Shipbuilding. Shipbuilding does not give you the ability to build ships. Anybody will have the ability to build ships. So Shipbuilder is basically going to provide attachments for ships, similar to how carpenters don't construct the house, they build the things that go in the house. To premise shipbuilding, there is going to be a lot of PvE content that happens out on the open ocean. There's going to be raid bosses, world bosses, whatever. There's going to be things to battle out on the open sea. There's also your caravans are going to be able to change from land to seafaring caravans and back to land again when they hit the other shore. Obviously, that's going to create sea pirates, a use, a value, an opportunity for pirates of the open sea. So ship warfare will absolutely be a thing. I mean, we got ship weaponry and defensive armaments. These are all going to be very, very sought after things in half the world. If we are going to evaluate shipbuilding as a means of making money, I got to put it down here with carpenter. I think it's going to have a little bit more long-term effectiveness. That's kind of where I'm thinking shipbuilder for now. I don't think it's going to be a super lucrative, but I think it's going to be a really fun one. So last but not least, siege weapons. Siege is what makes this world go around. Node siege, castle siege is where you're typically going to use siege weapons. They can be crafted or purchased from NPCs. I would expect that the crafted ones are probably going to be stronger than the NPC versions. Otherwise, why bother crafting them? Trebuchets and ballistas are going to be the thing. So yeah, defenders do get siege weapons as well as the attacking team. Profitability, I can see guilds wanting to buy siege weapons. I can see mayors wanting to buy siege weapons. I don't see siege weapon. I think that is probably going to be the least profitable profession in the game. What do you guys think? Am I missing something on there? I'm not saying that they're not important. I think they are incredibly important to the game, but I think they are going to be funded by the node, by the mayors, by the guilds as a whole. I think in terms of profitability, siege weapon building, as cool as it sounds, is going to be your least desirable profession. I think alchemy, blacksmith, assuming blacksmith is what is responsible for caravan management and development, armor smithing, weaponsmithing, processing, and gathering. These are going to be all very lucrative professions. They all have a constant need in the game. Scribes might surprise us and take an S tier as well if runic power stones become a super hot commodity. Same with cooking. If cooking buffs turn out to be really, really impactful, really amazing, I think that it could become S tier as well. But I feel like because its reagents will be far more easily acquired than a lot of this other stuff, it'll still be very easy to supply cooking. But we'll have to see what kind of high-level recipes become available. Processing and gathering, I think, speak for themselves. Raw materials are always going to be in high demand. Everything in the game requires raw materials, which also then requires to be processed. So I think there might be specific things within those that are going to be less desirable. You know, like I can see taming being far less desirable than, say, mining in terms of money making, especially. But because you master that tree as a whole, that's kind of irrelevant. Quick recap, we went over basically all of the individual crafting professions tonight. We don't have a lot of information on some of them. We don't have any information on others. So a lot of it is speculation as to the actual effectiveness of items that profession is going to be able to produce, i.e. cooking, alchemy, scribe. How effective are those items going to be? Again, I apologize for the images here. I will clean them up and do this properly. But I think, for the most part, we've got this fairly accurate. This tier ranking is specifically for if I'm a master alchemist, what's my ability to generate gold? What is my ability to generate gold compared to other professions? Is it going to be far and above siege weapon crafting? Most likely. Is it going to be far and above a gathering? Maybe not. It might actually even be secondary to that. Gathering and processing might be your top tier ones. But we will have to wait and see a little bit more details from the game when things come out. I do expect that this list will probably expand out a little bit more. It is pretty rare, in my experience of doing tier lists, for them to be top heavy like this. So I think that's a very good thing. I think that's a very healthy thing, as it means that more professions are going to be viable for personal economic growth. but we'll have to wait and see exactly how things line up. So voila, here you go, guys. So I've updated the list with the proper image sizes. I just had to go and make them actual square images instead of the rectangular screen cuts that I did. Obviously, we don't have any icons or anything yet for what these professions are. Otherwise, I definitely would have used those. But this will have to do for now. You will be able to find a link to this list in the video description down below, as well as I have posted it up on my Twitter. So by all means, feel free to come by, comment on it. What do you think? Do you agree with this list? What adjustments would you make? What other considerations would you have when making your rankings? Let me know down in the description below, guys. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, ring that sub notification bell. And guys, I will see you in the next one. Keep the hype alive!